All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're cracking open a really important book, Matthew Desmond's Pulitzer Prize winner, Evicted. This is a book that comes from some incredibly deep reporting, and it asks a really fundamental question about what it actually means to be poor in America today. And that brings us to the book's central and pretty radical argument. What if eviction isn't just something that happens to you when you're poor? What if it's the very thing that keeps you poor, or even makes you poorer? It's a powerful idea, and to really get our heads around it, we've got to start small, with a single story. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Milwaukee, and it's not just any winter, it's the snowiest one they've had on record. It all starts so small, almost ridiculously so. We meet a woman named Arleen and her two boys, Jory and Jafaris. One of her sons throws a snowball at a car, and that simple act, a kid just being a kid, spirals out of control. The driver gets angry, kicks in their apartment door, and that's it. That's all it takes for their landlord to give them a notice to leave. Just like that.
So after a really rough stint in a homeless shelter, Arleen finally finds a new place. Now, let's talk about the money, because this is where the math gets brutal. Her entire income for the whole month is a single welfare check, $628.
And how much is her rent for this new place? A place, by the way, that's in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. It's $550. You don't have to be a math genius to see the problem here, right? And this chart, wow, it really just lays it all out, doesn't it? That rent, that $550, that's 88% of her entire monthly income. It's just gone, right off the top. That leaves her with just 12%, $78, to cover everything else. We're talking heat, electricity, food for her and her kids, clothes, her son's asthma medicine, you name it. How is anyone supposed to make that work for a whole month? So Arleen's story is heartbreaking. But here's the thing, it's not unique, not even close. What we're seeing here is just one family's experience in what's really a nationwide crisis. So let's zoom out a bit. You know, it's wild to think about, but evictions didn't used to be like this. In the past, it was a huge deal, a public event. People would show up, protest. I mean, during the Great Depression, you could have 1,000 people gather in the Bronx just because 3 families were getting put out. But today, it's an industry. It's this industrialized routine machine. There are companies that specialize in the physical removal, data miners who sell your eviction history. It's a whole different world. And believe me, that machine is working overtime. Just take a look at this number. 1 in 8. So what does that mean? That's how many renters in Milwaukee were forced to move between 2009 and 2011, just a 3-year window. And that number includes the official court-ordered evictions, sure, but it also includes all the informal stuff. You know, the landlord pays you a little cash to get out, or maybe they just take the door off its hinges. And remember, this is not just a Milwaukee problem. But, you know, to really understand this whole system, you can't just look at the tenants. We have to flip the coin and look at the other side of the rent receipt. Let's talk about the landlords. So we meet landlords like Sherrena. She's a former teacher who's now an inner-city entrepreneur. And look, owning property isn't free. You've got mortgages, taxes, repairs, all of it. But the book points out that while it can be risky, renting to the very poor can also be extremely profitable. You can buy properties for cheap and then charge whatever rent the market allows. And Sherrena is very clear-eyed about this. When a tenant she likes falls behind, she says, "I love Lamar, but love don't pay the bills." Then there's Tobin, who owns this huge mobile home park. He's got this system where he sometimes lets tenants work off their rent. But here's the catch. His tenants have a name for what happens when their memory of a verbal deal doesn't quite match his. They call it being Tobined. And that right there shows you the power dynamic, doesn't it? The landlord holds all the cards in these informal deals. It's a business model where the tenant is the one who carries all the risk. And that power, well, it has huge life-altering consequences for tenants who are living with absolutely no financial safety net. Remember Lamar, the tenant Sherrena said she loved? Well, he's a disabled vet raising 2 boys on what's left over after he pays her rent, which is just $78 a month. He's trying to be a good dad, telling his boys he wants them at home with him, not out on the streets. So when he falls behind on rent, he tries to work it off. He cleans out this absolutely disgusting basement, a job he thinks is worth at least $250. Sherrena gives him $50.
Then there's Lorraine, who lives in Tobin's trailer park. Her life is just this constant month-to-month struggle. She falls behind, so she agrees to this super strict payment plan in court. But then there's a crisis at the park, and she withholds her rent. Boom, a bright yellow removal notice from the sheriff shows up on her door. She pulls together some of the money, but uses the rest to try and get her gas turned back on. She just wants a hot shower to help with the pain from her fibromyalgia, but it's not enough. The gas stays off. So you hear these stories, Lamar's story, Lorraine's story, and you start to see this devastating pattern emerge. It's not just about not having enough money. The act of eviction itself, it becomes a trap.
So how is it a trap? Well, here's the crucial part. An eviction isn't just a one-time thing. You get this official court record, and it follows you. It's like a black mark. Suddenly, it's way harder to find a decent, safe place to live. You get pushed into worse housing, in more dangerous neighborhoods, and that just makes you more likely to get evicted again.
And this, right here, this is the absolute core of the book's argument. It's this vicious cycle, a total cascading failure. First, you lose your home. That means your kids have to change schools. Maybe you lose your job because you're in chaos. Then you have to settle for a substandard apartment, but you're probably still paying way too much rent. Do you see, eviction isn't just a result of poverty. It's an engine that creates more poverty.
For so long, when we've talked about poverty, we focused on things like jobs or welfare. But what Desmond argues is that we've been missing the most basic piece of the puzzle, a home. Think about it. In any distressed neighborhood, people might have different connections to jobs or gangs or social programs, but almost every single one of them has a landlord. And that leaves us with a really powerful and kind of uncomfortable question. If a stable home is the foundation for everything, for health, for education, for community, what kind of society are we building when that foundation is crumbling for so many people? The book makes it clear that without a home, everything else falls apart. And you have to wonder what the consequences are, not just for these families, but for all of us.